Hello, 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 hello. It is time once more, not twice more, only once more, to do one of those streams. Welcome, James. Hope you had a great day. Hope you. Wait, it should. Wait, hold on. It's probably like midday for you, right? Because you're in America, I think. So hope you have a great day. Welcome, Shoy. Shoy or Shoal? Shoy. There you go. Hope you had a great day as well. And as always, today we're gonna do some feedback. Not this time we don't have as many posts as we had last time, which means we have a little bit more, I guess, wiggle room when it comes to time. So today we can actually do 10 minutes per person. I think the lowest that we had was 6 minutes or 7. 3 minutes more is actually quite a lot. So yeah, it's always better to have, you know, a little bit more. Well, of course it's always it's always better to have more time, but it's also just more, you know, I don't know, more chill for me, because then I don't have to spend the whole time trying to get through it. Welcome, Novum. Hope you had a great day. And welcome, AEPBR or APBR. Sounds also interesting. Yep. Today, of course, as always, we're going to begin with the one that has been posted first, and go all the way down to the last. But of course, if you have posted in the beginning and then at the end, you will be the one that we will cover first, and we will cover also not only the first post, but also the last post, because you have posted first. Yeah. Because I see, you know, one thing that I actually kind of always thought about is oftentimes people like giving feedback to, for example, stylized pieces is different than giving feedback, for example, for, well, it's not that different, but for example, if you do stylized stuff, the feedback, I guess it's a little different. The anatomy is still, you know, still important, but the way you want to stylize things can be very different between different stylization styles. And so it's a little harder to kind of gauge sometimes what, for example, the focus was in the stylization. Oftentimes it's like I think there's like a base stylization way that people sort of people do. I think like there are different stylization styles that exist definitely. Of course, you know, most of the time that's you know, it's not 100% unique, also because, you know, most of the time people get, you know, kind of gain, or at least in the beginning try to recreate what other artists do, which is, I think, you know, how you can do it. Which is actually the next video tomorrow. It's gonna be about art styles, how to discover your own, and why it may not be what you expect, I guess. Or the way that I would approach it if I would be a beginner artist, okay? So that, you know, that might be interesting if you want to do stylized stuff. I'm not the best at stylized stuff, but the good thing is, if you can do realistic, you can oftentimes also do stylized. Of course, with practice you get better at it, but if you want to recreate something, for example, a certain style, I think it's definitely doable, I guess. Yeah, I actually recreated my last character from my last video on Tuesday. I recreated that one as like a Disney character, and yeah, that one was pretty simple as well. It's kind of all about understanding or analyzing the the theme, I guess, that the stylization follows, or the main principles, and then trying to recreate that, or also just recreating like an example of that style and then turning it into, or giving it the characteristics that the original character had. Glad I could make it. Glad you could make it. Same. Good evening. Welcome, Emiliano. Hope you had a great day. It's APBR. Okay. Welcome, Aries. Hope you had a great. Hope you had a great day as well. Wrong time to stream. I got Rust Wipe today to play. Oh no. Well, there's one hard decision to make. Threw in some last minute updates. Oh, okay. I feel like I'm stuck doing stylized stuff and I want to branch out into more hyper detailed work. Have no idea where to begin. I think that's something that I sort of covered tomorrow as well. But it's I think it's easy to get stuck in stylized because you're kind of not afraid, but you have a lot of respect, and you're unsure if you can do realistic stuff, but I think realistic stuff is, I guess, like, you know, if you I don't know, well, I want to say you can do stylized without knowing realistic stuff, but I actually don't think that's true. You can definitely do stylized if you know realistic stuff. I don't know if it's the other way around, because the basics come from realism. So I don't know if you if you can create stylized characters without knowing the actual anatomy. Could watch the video 10 times. Where do we send our art? You can join the Discord and then read the rules, and then you can post your pieces in personal feedback in the personal feedback channel. Everything that will be posted now that hasn't been posted before I started the stream, we will cover in 2 weeks in the next stream. So if you have something that you just finished or that you're working on, you have 2 more weeks to make it even better. Can I upload animations to the Discord for this section? Yes, as long as it's as long as it's visual art, I guess I can give feedback on it. Someone once posted music. I tried to give feedback on that, but I'm not really that deep into music. I want to do maybe more in the future, but or at least, whatever, explore that a little bit more. But right now, not so much. Welcome, Playtor. Hope you had a great day as well. You need to review and like the rules first. True. Depends on how stylized it is. You don't need anatomy for low poly. Yeah, I guess. Well, even then, you kind of low poly still follows the most basic stuff, like how big, like the proportions of the arms in relation to the body, or how long the legs are in relation to the upper body, stuff like that. But of course, I guess the more low poly, the less you need to go into detail until you reach a cube or Among Us, I guess, where anatomy doesn't matter at all. Okay, let's get going. We have 10 minutes this time for each person. So let me set the timer and then we can begin. We can see we have 12 people that have submitted something. Some more than one. And I must say, this batch, let's call it, were some pretty high quality, what do you call it? Like high quality posts. Not only, of course the pieces, but also the description about them. I didn't really have, sometimes we had just like people sometimes just post stuff in there and then, we cover it on stream. But of course, if you kind of describe what you're looking for, what you want to improve, or just have general questions, that is always easier than for me to give feedback on. Or, it's also then for you easier to get the feedback that you want. If you just don't post anything, you can't expect anything. Okay, timer 10 minutes. There we go. Yeah, but this time I feel like everybody has posted, you know, at least something about their piece, so that I have a little bit more to work off of. Also, you know, if other people, which I think also, you know, more and more people give valuable feedback, which I appreciate a lot as well. I try to give out cookies as when I see them, but it's always also more useful, or I think if you want to get feedback from others, it's also useful to post, you know, a little bit more about your own piece as well. Okay, let's begin. Heputive, whatever, okay, has posted first, so let's cover this one first, which is a recreation, a three-dimensionalization of this image. Hold on. I can't speak when I have this speaking in the background. There you go. A caricature of, what is his name again? I forgot his name. Let's call him Bert, okay? Bert in 3D instead of 2D, a caricature of course. There you go. Looks pretty nice, I must say. I like so one thing that when I created the thumbnail, this one's in the thumbnail, one thing that I kind of saw, which I thought was really cool, is the level of detail, or the level of detail that you went into. It might be easy to kind of think about, like, oh, well, you know, everybody kind of knows that peach fuzz is something that kind of exists in a lot of, you know, on a lot of materials, or maybe peach fuzz is more for faces, but like these small threads that come out of surfaces. But then during your work to actually think about that is a different thing, and also, you know, using it, I guess, in the correct way. I actually want to use a real life reference just for the suit, just to see, you know, what it looks like, because I'm curious if these threads, or these little you know, whatever you call hair, would actually make sense there, or if the material that this is more like a nylon, or more like a leathery material, that it wouldn't really be there. I'm curious about that. What is he called again? Homelander, there you go. Homelander. What is this? Is that actually his name, or does he have an actual name? No, he was kind of born in a lab, right? So he had just that name, I think. No, hold on, maybe. I don't know. Let's see if we can find some. I don't know if we can find some super detailed shots, because they're all. I don't know why, but somehow the image quality of Google Images just goes further and further downhill. You just only find trash now. Like, you find all these, like, what are they? Well, this one still is okay, but some of them are like 700 by 700 images, which is like, what do you even do with that? Why would you even look that up or suggest it to me? I expect more. And even if you set it to what is it here? You can go to the filter and then set it to big file sizes or big image sizes. Even those, I don't know if it's just me or I demand more and more. But it doesn't, like 12K, well, 1200 by 1600 doesn't seem that much. It's like not even 1080p. Weird. Well, it is 1080p, but well, still, okay. Here we have a suit which looks nice. We have some nice edge light here, so we can actually see if there are little hairs. It doesn't seem that there is. Maybe if you go a little closer, I think it's hard to really get the scale of these very, very fine details right in 3D. Maybe if you go a little closer, we can see these small threads, maybe even just weaving in between the different bigger threads. But here I can't see it right now. And I wonder what material this is, because if it's more like a nylon material, very flexible, and you know, whatever, then I don't think it would have these little hairs, or just very, very little. So maybe here on the blue part, it doesn't necessarily make that much sense, but the little beard hairs are really nice. You can see them here. They work really well in giving it just a little bit more detail. Looking at the actual recreation. Of course, this style is very extreme. I think you've done your best when it comes to the actual like recreation. You could probably go more extreme if you wanted to, maybe even when it comes to the colors. I think with this one you wanted to capture more of the shapes and really capture sort of the essence that is in here rather than like each individual detail, because I think if you would translate this, already looks kind of scary. I think if you would translate that to 3D, that would look pretty insane. So I think you've done a pretty good job kind of translating this to here and making it, I guess, a little bit more, whatever you want to call it, natural. Yeah, I like the textures and the details here with the variation in rough and I guess smoother or glossier for the texture here, for example, for these little symbols. Same for this part here, and that it's actually bump maps. And also the seam lines. We actually have seam lines, and they make quite a big difference. Even just these bigger pipe-looking, I don't remember what they're called. There's a name for these. I think it's actually just called piping. These endings to these seams with these weird, I don't know what they are exactly, but they're like these pipes going along. And they help, even those can help. One thing that I want to mention here is, I think once again, there's like thinking about applying detail, and then there's thinking about what kind of detail to apply, which is then the next step, I guess. Like, first of all, you need to remember, almost every surface, or basically every surface, has imperfections, and then you need to add those with procedural textures or whatever. And then the next step would be, how would these procedural textures actually, or how would these imperfections look like? This right now looks a little bit like a plastic pipe that runs along. I think if you look at the original, it would be a little bit more like a leather, piping, I guess you could call it, that sort of ends these pieces of fabric. We have this leather here, which this one's quite big, but that could also just be because here it's maybe a little bigger. But I think the detail that is here right now, which looks like the perfectly clean and painted surface, looks like it's been chipped off. I don't think it works 100% for this, because leather doesn't really chip off. I think it sort of shaves off, or it gets little cuts, but I don't think it would get these, it wouldn't sort of splinter off because it's such a soft material, which is what these imperfections currently look like. I think if you would replace this with small little cuts, or small little, like, basically cuts, or I guess shaving sounds kind of weird. Something that is a little bit soft, makes it appear a little softer, I think would work a little bit better here. Which I think applies to these here as well. I think the material, the metal looks nice. We have some, I think the imperfections work pretty well. Let's look at the original. One thing that you always, I think, to make your imperfections even better, it would be to look at the way, like, the way that I always imagine how imperfections would look like is imagining taking the perfect 3D model, okay, and then letting it appear in your hand, and then, or basically putting it into the real world, and then letting it basically simulate in your head. So if he's wearing it like that, and it's perfect, and then he runs around with it, what would happen to it? I don't know, if he's fighting someone, it's probably gonna maybe get some indents, maybe it's gonna, scratches would probably work there, because he's probably gonna slide above, like, over the ground and all that. So here scratches, I think, makes a lot of sense. If it's more like stationary material, like, for example, like railings or some sort of metal pipes, they probably wouldn't have these scratches necessarily, but they would probably have on their edges these, what are they called? These worn off edges, basically, because it doesn't move around, so there's no chipping except maybe for age, because the paint is chipping off, but it's more that basically the paint towards bending, because maybe people will kind of go over it a little bit with their hands, kind of chip it off. there it would probably look a little bit more like that. This also, you know, it's more like a raw material rather than like a painted material that has a coat of paint over it, which is when you would see these chipped corners, for example, or edges. Oh, one more thing that I want to mention is the post-production, okay? One thing that I always want to say is the two letters, okay, that you always should keep in mind when you finish your render is PP, okay? What does PP mean? That means post-production, okay? Why do I say post-production? These two were adjusted. We're going to talk about this one a little later, but let's actually hide it so we can, okay, well, you can see what I did, but let's look at this one. So here, this one, if you compare it to this one, the range of, I guess, colors is a little wider, which gives it a little bit more contrast and also adds a little bit more punch to it. It makes it sort of, it makes it more present, sound weird, but it gives it more, more range of colors, which makes it appear less flat, let's call it, okay? It's hard to see when you render your image, because then, you know, you don't know any other version. But once you put it, for example, into Photoshop or even Photopea, which is, if you just go in here and you Google Photopea, it's basically Photoshop but in your browser, of course, with a few less, you know, features, but still, you can basically do almost everything that I do, for example, in my, can you do, oh, you can even use the camera raw filter. Basically, there's basically everything you really need for the most basic, you know, post-processing. And once you've done that, let's actually do that real quick, because we have the time, okay? Let's just grab this and put it in there, and then we can see what I would, for example, do. It's hard to see the range of colors if you don't put it in here, but remember, like, just remembering, oh, I need to still do post-production, because you can basically almost always do post-production on your images. And then just playing around with some settings can show you, or then you will realize how much you can do. You can even press Z to zoom in, and then you can go in here and say filter. Can you, where do we have layers? There, layers. Can we do, oh, we can make it in a smart object, okay? And then we say filter camera raw, and then we can, oh, well, those are quite a not as many settings, but still we can play around with a little bit. Here we can see the distribution. Most of it is in the darker area just because the background is dark, but even then we can see we don't really have any highlights right now. There is some light on the left side and on the right side, but it's not really that. I think on the left side you could have a little bit more. So what of course you could do is you could kind of bring it up a little bit more, which brings everything a little higher, which is maybe not necessarily what you want. But you can also just go in here and you can make a new layer with this little thingy right there and set this to, I think it's, what is it called again? It's called linear, not linear dodge, it's color dodge. I think that would be this one. And then we can grab the brush. And all you need to do to add a little bit more glow into this is you grab this. Oh, of course, I don't have my hotkeys. Make it a little bigger. Okay, that works well. And then make it nice and soft. And then we can just, by grabbing the select tool, we can select a color that is somewhere here. And then if we draw, oh, hello, that's the wrong one. Nice. Oh, this one. Then we can see it makes it brighter. Of course, we need a little bit less strength. I like to set it to 10. And then if we do this, we can see we add a little bit more, a little bit, you know, like a brightness to it. It looks a little different than in Photoshop. Maybe also because of the color that I chose. Maybe if I choose a different one or just make it a little bit more, less saturated, for example. Maybe that can help. When we put it in there, we can see we add a little bit more brightness into it, which can already help. Which is basically what I've done here. If you look at the before and after, just because, just looking at this, that's what happens. Well, first of all, of course, the what is it called again? Camera raw filter. Add a little bit more contrast, just slightly more. And then with this one, nope, this one, nope, yeah, there you go. We can add just a few more highlights into it, which just adds a little bit more range into the image and can help make the image pop a little bit more. There you go. Yeah. And then I adjusted or added some small shadows as well, which isn't necessarily necessary, but I did it here for the thumbnail, okay? Yeah. Otherwise, it looks really nice. I don't really have too much to say about the proportions. I think everything looks, you know, good and, you know, fits this. One thing that I want to mention real quick is the hair. This right now looks like hair that hasn't been styled, like it's naturally falling that way. If you create hair, one thing to always keep in mind is the clumping, and if you add something into, like if you put something, if you put a product into your hair, the clumping will be even stronger. So if you look at his hair, for example, we can see, let's see, can we see it a little bit better in others? Let's see. We can see the clumping. We can see some big clumps and then in between some smaller ones. But we can see some very broad sort of lines that we can draw or that we can see here. I think here we have a very, very even distribution of the hair. I think with a little bit more clumping, this would look even better and maybe even a little bit shinier so that it looks like there's actually some product in there. But otherwise, it looks really nice. Okay. And then, you know, the topology, I don't really have anything too much to say about it either. I think this looks a little bit like automatic retopology just because of the, you know, edge flow, but of course that is not a bad thing. I like to do some automatic retopology myself. On to the next one in just a second. I can't send there, I don't know why. Probably, have you read the rules? Welcome, space. I'm nervous. Welcome, Vizuchi. Go to Dota? What do you mean? I don't play Dota or League, so I don't have a... Well, I have played League before, but anyway. John is his real name? Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never really heard his real name being used. Google Images, yeah, Google Images just got worse and worse. I usually now use Pinterest. That's just the easiest now for me. Because then there you can actually find images that people have pinned. And most of the time, if it's not just like a link of a link of a link, you actually find the real image, which is really nice. Google Images heyday was 2012. Welcome Beyond Face, hope you had a great day. Wish you the best, thank you. A lycra with a screen printed pattern on it, maybe. It's a fuzz magnet, yeah. Can you please explain how to apply skin texture of a head? Welcome Tala, hope you had a great day. How to apply skin texture of a head? Well, you can either texture paint it, or you can use, if you already have a skin texture, you can UV unwrap it. Well, you can UV unwrap your head, and then you can use UVing, like the UV editing window, for example. Okay, let's unwrap this real quick. Horribly, there you go. And then, for example, we can use the grab function to just kind of move it around, to kind of move it in place to where it needs to be. Or, of course, if you have soft wrap and you already have the base mesh for the texture, then you can just apply the texture to the base mesh and then shrink wrap or soft wrap that base mesh to your character, and then it has the shape of the character and also the texture perfectly applied. xCloud, welcome. Unfortunately, hold on, I can translate it, but I unfortunately can't speak. I think it's Russian. Let's see what it says. Okay, there you go. Vital, are you here? I don't know who Vital is, but that's definitely not me. Maybe it is. I just realized how much you look like the model. Maybe a little darker hair. Actually, if I cut my hair, it gets brighter. Welcome, Loqueoquiera. Oh, I think that's Spanish. Maybe Portugal. Maybe I'm completely off, but welcome. Sculpting. Meanwhile, I see your stream. Nice. Okay, on to number 2. Greg Wastick, I think, maybe. I actually forgot to read the comments that we see here, of course, in the channel, and he actually made a new post, so we can actually grab the newest version and look at it. Unfortunately, it is unknown whatever, so I have to rename it. If you want to save, if you want to give me, if you want to gift me something, the easiest thing you can give me is time by calling your images you post something, so that when I just, you know, download them all, and they all are called _unknown, I always have to rename them. You can see it right there, and it doesn't tell me like, hey, do you want to just rename it automatically? I just have to do it manually, or I don't know how you do it automatically, but yeah, that, you know, can take a little time, a little while sometimes. Okay, there's one more. Once more, unbelievable. Okay, do we have another one? Nope. Okay, let's go to the source of the post. There it is. Nope, that's not the one. We need to go high. Do we? Yeah, we do. It is right there. So, making this for a Ghost in the Shell fan film. This is scrapped. This was my first redo of the character. First one ain't even worth showing. On my third redo now, figured how it's a great time to collect notes. 2 things I went out of my way to fix on the iteration after this. It didn't read as big enough, and the likeness wasn't there. Wasn't where I wanted it. But at the same time, the snake is too stout. Ended up extending that and adjusting the proportions to be more comfy looking. The ear was pretty flat and fat. Flat and fat. Oh, a bad combination. And bad in that iteration too. Madcap Screeny is the current 3rd iteration where I tweaked those 2 issues I had with. Okay, then we had some nice references. I think you said here that there's some variation in there. As long as I don't speak about the, what is it, live action thingy, it's all good. And then we have another correction, got a bit further, and then we have a new one, which is right here. Oh, which is right there. Let's look at the newer one. This one. And the details. Okay, first of all, we need the references, so let's look at the references. There you go. Okay, what anime is this from? I would guess it's an anime. Looks like an anime. This one looks more like a comic. This one looks more like an anime. Yeah, what is he from? Vitaly is a Russian name. Okay. Welcome from official promise. You can call me Alex. Okay. A little bit easier. Using PureRef helps a lot. Yeah, PureRef is pretty useful, I would say. I use it for everything, for every project. Okay. You consume 0 media? True. Well, I consume YouTube, and that's all that I need, okay? That's all I have time for. Okay, let's look at it. So, Ghost in the Shell, there it is. I knew it. Had it in my head, but I didn't want to spoil it. Okay. Yeah. So let's look at the... So one thing that I always do if I want to create a likeness of a character is I look at all the angles that I can find. The thing here is we can see a sort of front view, we can see a sort of front view, we can see a sort of front view, and we can see a sort of front view. The minimum that I'm always trying to find is a side view and a front view. So if you go and we already have a sort of front view, let's look at a, what is it called again? Oh no. Where is it? There it is. Nope. Nope. There was it. Oh no. There it is. Bar 2. Okay. Bar 2. So there it is. What I usually do is bar 2 face, and then face either front if I find something there, or side. Oftentimes you don't find anything, but sometimes you do. I don't really see that much. That kind of helps me here. Something that also can work is, but to video sequences where you can see, because usually in videos people actually move around and rotate their head, you can see different angles. For this, I don't really find that much. Oh, this one is, I guess that's him. Good. What is that? There you go. Okay. So let's look at them. Okay. So one of the greatest things about the profile view is that we can see more features than in the front view. So in the side view, we can see the lips, chin, nose, maybe even eyes and forehead. What we can't see in, well, we can see all that, but we can't really see the shape of them from the front view, except maybe for the width. So here we have quite a lot more to work with. Looking at the nose, for example, I think, let's actually grab my pen. So here, what I usually look at first when it comes to the nose is the nose shape, and the way that I would describe it is I would draw like either a trapezoid or a triangle. Here, for example, I would have a line that usually goes down like this, and then we either have something that, well, actually we always have a trapezoid. It just depends on how long this line is, but we have this, that, and then going in this direction, going up again. I guess maybe even one more like that. So it's not a, whatever it's called, okay, it's an n-gon. And the way that this can differ is, first of all, this line here, how high basically the sort of tip of the nose is, and then also how high the nostrils are. Of course, there are more variation, like this little bump that can be up here for the nose bridge, or like the transition from nose to forehead, but here we have the nose, and I would say here it's quite even when it comes to the height. Bottom of the nose, root of the nose, whatever you want to call it, is basically on height with the nostril. Here it's a little different. Maybe, actually no, yeah, I think it's a little different. Here the bottom is somewhere over here, and then we have the nostril a little higher. Of course, he has his head tilted down a little bit, which also means that the nostril now is a little higher than the root. But if he would look straight forward, it looks like it would be quite even. So you could probably bring down the nostril a little bit. What is it called? The little brow ridge here can probably be a little bit more prominent. I'm kind of, referencing this one now. Of course, if there's a different iteration that you like more, then it may be a little different. But here the forehead is a little bit more defined, the brow ridge. So you could probably add like a small little bump right there, which then evens out into the rest of the forehead. Oh, something that I actually want to check real quick is, can we find a bodybuilder. I want to see one from the side because I want to see the neck. Usually if you look at a person, what you see is... Hello, there you go. What you see is a sort of... Where's my pen? There it is. Here's the back of the head, and then it goes slightly further forward, and then back again. Of course, this curve can vary quite a lot. If you look at this one here, he maybe has a little bit of a more... Actually, no. We can see the back of the head is probably somewhere over here. It goes forward, and then back again. Looking at this one, I guess you could sort of say that it's there as well. I kind of considered if this could be a little bit further back, but it doesn't necessarily need to be, I think. Especially if he's supposed to be very muscular. But if he's supposed to be very muscular, I think I would add a little bit more volume to the chest. The chest looks kind of flat right now. Looking at the side view, you can especially see it. If a person has a very developed chest, you would see quite a protrusion here, which currently I think is flatter than it needs to be. Of course, in the middle, it's a little, I guess, flatter than on the outside, basically like in this region here. Or in this region is probably the one where it's the thickest, because that's where all the sort of fibers, I guess, come together. But I think even this can, looking at the shadow right here, could use a little bit more volume. Yeah. Let's see. I'm looking at the shoulders. They may be a little too far out, maybe. It's hard to tell. Usually if you have your arms just hanging, the arms are basically touching the chest, rib cage or whatever. The upper arm is touching the rib cage. If he would lower his arm, it kind of looks like he wouldn't touch his rib cage. Because the rotation point, or the, what is it called, like the shoulder joint, would probably be somewhere over here. No, it actually would be somewhere over here. I guess then it would work. Yeah, okay. It looks a little wide, but maybe that's just me. Maybe that's the perspective. Let's look at the reference real quick again. That's the wrong one. We have some more, of course. Hold on. There it is. Okay. One thing that I see here, which is a little different, I think, in this one, is the nose width, which is a little weirdly displayed here, because I think it just appears way bigger because they always draw the base of the nose. The lines here are basically the base of the nose, which makes the nose appear way bigger than it, or wider than it actually is. You could, looking at the front view here, this looks quite wide, which I think fits pretty well. One thing that I would maybe say is that the nose here is a little more droopy, which also goes back to, nostril being higher than the nose tip. Here, looking at the front view, it's a little bit more like a V shape. Looking at the references though, it's a little flatter, at least the angle, if not like almost flat. Here's a little different, but here as well, it's a little flatter. So I would maybe push this area here a little higher, or probably rather push the nostril down. Although I would probably actually push the nostril higher, because the distance between nose and lips is a little longer as well. Actually, no. No, I would probably push the nostrils down. I think the distance here is pretty good. Yeah. And then one more thing. It's always kind of hard to identify the head shape if somebody has hair. Of course, you had a previous version with hair. This one doesn't have hair. I'm kind of... I think it can work. Yeah, I think the forehead or the head size is good. I think you can place a good this hairstyle on there. Of course, we have different hairstyles here, but he seems to have like this more, you know, whatever spiky hairstyle. If you want to do that one, which you've done in the previous version, it would probably work quite well. But one thing you have to consider is if this hairstyle is quite flat at the top, which also means that the hair, if the head is this round, something that you have to keep in mind for here is that if the hair, because the forehead isn't that long, it would probably start somewhere over here. And if you want to make this hair very flat, and it doesn't seem that long as well, and kind of judging it how long this needs to be, it would probably go from here to somewhere over here. But then if you draw more and more hair, you can see, and you want to kind of keep it the same height, you could of course go a little higher, but you can see as you go higher or further to the back, you can see the hair would need to be shorter and shorter and shorter, which doesn't really work that well, because then you would kind of see, you know, that he's balding at the top, which probably, you know, he doesn't, at least not here. So you could probably make the what is it? The top of the head maybe a little flatter, or you could shift the weight, the apex of the forehead, a little bit further back. That could work as well, because in the back you oftentimes have shorter hair. So this way you can kind of mitigate the short hair effect, I guess. Or you can also just make the hair longer, but then, you know, it looks a little different. Yep. Yeah. Welcome, Benjamin Pickford. Hope you had a great day. Remember binging it? Batu was my favorite character. Ooh. He looks pretty cool. Yeah, of course there's more we could get into, but unfortunately the time is over. If you want to post the next one, I mean the newer version for the next one, of course, you can always do that. Genuine question, okay. Is it possible for a single person to make a short film using Blender, character creation, animation, or am I living a dream? Depends on the scope. You could definitely do that. You know, people have created, games as one person. Just depends on how much time you want to spend on it and how much, what the scope would be. You know, it's probably going to be less than you want it to be, but you know, you could definitely do it. You can see. Look at the what is it called? There's this Space Marine sort of episodes. Is it? Hello, nice search bar. There you go. Astartes. This one, as far as I know, this has been done by one person. And one person only. There you go. Yeah, I think this has all been made by one person. And if you put your mind to it, and it takes a long time, of course, but if you put your mind to it, you can do stuff like this as well. Yeah, if you want to watch this, look, it is really, really cool and looks really, really awesome. I know nothing about Space Marines, but it still looks cool. Okay. Yeah, I highly recommend checking this out. It's really cool and kind of, shows you what you can create as a single person. You remind me of Daemon Targaryen for some reason. Red Phantom. Okay, thank you. I guess, maybe. Let's see what he looks like. Okay, interesting. I don't really have maybe the face. I don't know. But the hair definitely not. His nose was haunted me for a long time. I've been working on his damn thing. Yeah, the nose is kind of weird in the drawing, so it's kind of hard to kind of recreate that in 3D. I guess there's if it's kind of hard to gauge, I think it gives you more room to play around with. So that's a good thing. Welcome, Nedji. Hope you had a great day. Hi from France. Welcome in Germany. There's also an anime feature for film being made. Do you mean by... Oh, I don't remember his name, but I have him in here, right? Jalix Rosa. Do you mean him? Maybe. Yeah. This one's a little different because it's more, what is it called? Live action. He kind of, uses footage and transforms that and combines that with 3D. This one, of course, is fully 3D, the Astartes one. But of course, it's both, sort of fan-made movies, I guess. What takes the longest is the rendering of each frame. Yeah, true. You can also, of course, send that to a render farm and then do something else. But you can also, hit render and then come back the next week. Or yeah, I guess that's another option you can consider. On to the next one. The next one is by Sammy. Sammy has posted Breadman and then Jet from Valorant. Let's look at it. First of all, comments. Gluten-free bread, nice. And then this scope was made for me for my friend. The reference was a stupid Photoshop I made as a joke. This is my actual non-joke scope, like a general scope that I made something that is not Breadman. Breadman was mostly for like the torso. But this was my head sculpt, so I used the character Jet from Valorant because someone suggested it. I'm quite happy with it since it's my first actual good scope. Any suggestions on how I can improve it? Also, I'm aware of the random hole in the hair. And the hair looks very out of place, but it's my first first time, so any suggestions on how to improve it? Question mark. I'm proud of it because it's one of my first sculpts. I can totally improve my sculpts, just need practice. Okay. Looks pretty good for your first sculpt. There you go. I think hair is... I don't really know if hair is harder than anatomy. Hair can be a whole different challenge because I think people tend to sculpt hair by drawing out individual sort of strands, which is really hard to really make it look good. Keeping it in one big clump makes it way easier, and if you do it good or well, it can look pretty good. So I don't maybe sculpting hair is harder than it may seem, at least. Maybe not harder than sculpting a face, but this looks pretty good. Of course, as you first sculpt, as long as you see that it's a human, that's a good start. I think the good thing about, the thing about first sculpts, if they, for example, will be posted to feedback session, is that I oftentimes say the same thing, but of course, if it's, I always say that to a new person, so, I will always say it again. There's also a video that I made, how to learn sculpting. I think it's called How to Learn Sculpting the Fastest Way Possible or something like that. What I basically say in there is, in a little bit more detail, is how you, learn sculpting at least characters as fast as you can, I guess. The way that I would suggest doing it is looking, for example, Googling anatomy for artist's head. And then looking at... Oh, I think I need to look up face. There you go. And then let's see if we can find it. There's one that shows the simplified head in 4 stages. Very simple, a little bit more complex, and then realistic. And the way that I would suggest learning anatomy is looking for, first of all, basically, hold on, let me see if I can find, it's kind of hard to explain what it looks like if you haven't seen it before, but this one. So here we can see The realistic head, that is your goal, okay? But to reach that goal, you need to first learn the primary shapes, cylinder, whatever this is, and then a helmet. Then we go, and then this would be the first thing that I would suggest learning and sculpting. So if you do these a few times so that you can get used to creating the basic head shape, you know, that is very important. The reason why I always say you should go from here to here to here is because this always builds on top of the previous thing. So if you say, hey, I already, you know, this looks pretty doable, I want to go straight to this one, well, maybe you can succeed, but it's still better to do this a few times at least. You know, it doesn't have to be like crazy because you're going to do these anyway each time, but okay, another, hold on. But doing these can get you more comfortable with, first of all, the sculpting tools, and also how you create a base for your head base. Then learning how, dude, I don't want to hear your stories. Then going over and splitting this into smaller pieces to learn the first level shapes, let's call it, or that's what it's called here, and then learning the second level, I guess, shapes. This you can understand way better if you know what this looks like, or if you understand this, how this came from here, you will understand how this came from here. And then of course how you turn this to this would be the next step. For this I would, you know, for here, I think you have a pretty good head shape. You could, you know, of course, doing these a few more times can probably always help. Also just because then you get used to using the sculpting tools, but then going over to this one, for example, to understand the structure of the head and recreating this a few times so that you get used to the basic head shapes. And you know, when I say like, oh, you know, doing this a few times, I don't necessarily mean that you do this when you think you've reached this point, or you give up, I guess, or you think you're done. Then you stop and you redo it again, and then you redo it again. That's not necessarily what I mean. That's not really how I like to practice something. What I usually like to do is I like to include the new thing that I want to learn into my current project. So if you say, hey, I want to sculpt jet, what I would do is I would say, hey, I want to learn how to, or you could say, hey, I want to learn how to sculpt this, the helmet head, and then also the first level blockout. So you sculpt this one first, and then you turn this into this. And then you try to turn this into you know, jet. It could also just, you know, you could try going here, but just making sure that you understand these stages, you know, brings you faster, probably the fastest way to the realistic finish. You could try, you know, sculpting this immediately, but it's, you know, it probably leads to more confusion and frustration than if you first try to go through the steps. Yeah, especially in the beginning, you will learn so much. So how I always imagine learning is a graph that looks like this, where in the beginning you learn exponentially, and then as you go further and further in years, I guess, it gets less and less and less. Of course, you can always learn a little bit, but especially in the beginning, you learn so much that I don't really want to give you like crazy feedback on this one, because probably the third sculpt that you do, even without any feedback from me, will look way better than this. So yeah, I think starting with this and trying to understand this by sculpting it, understanding what I mean with understanding is basically in your head, almost sort of having a plan how you create this, every step that you need to do to create this, having that in your head, not just like, hey, again, oftentimes when you want to learn visual art, I think the thing that you think about is like, hey, okay, I understand what it looks like, but that doesn't mean that you understand how you can create it. I think that's a big difference. That is sometimes, I guess, it's easy to forget. And then once you get into it, you realize how hard it is. So, you know, don't just say, hey, this looks pretty easy, so I'm going to go straight to the next one. Actually do it and see how hard it is before you go further than you can. Okay. Yeah. And then of course Breadman, I think it's more of a meme, so I don't necessarily, you know, think that it's like an actual suggestion or a submission. But it, you know, the bread looks pretty, like the details look pretty nice. Maybe a little bit more like the inside of bread, but still, you know, looks like bread, so that's nice. Yeah. Oh, one more thing. I have started sculpting or practicing or learning sculpting characters. First the head and then the body. First the head, then the upper body, then upper body and arms. Then upper body, arms, legs. And then I think head, upper body, arms, legs, feet and hands. So doing it in steps makes it easier to progress rather than like, hey, I want to learn characters, so I'm going to do a full body character. You can probably do that as well, but that, you know, was too stressful for me. So doing it in steps, at least for me, was easier. And maybe it's easier for you as well. There's also an anime feature film being made fully in Blender by one person. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, that I already read that. It's something else, okay. Cornus Esport, welcome. Hope you had a great day. It's by Denver Jackson. Okay. Worlds Divide. Interesting. Let's see. Let's check it out. This one? Looks like it. Interesting. The wishing jar. Oh, nice. Okay. Currently in productions. Maybe, I don't, you know. I see one person here. Is that the person I would guess? If there are more people, then of course I can't see it just looking at this. But if you say that there aren't, then I will believe you, okay? So that's another one, if you want to check that out. Something that has been made by one person. It's kind of crazy. Let's see what he says. Kind of crazy that I have a trilogy of films all taking place in the same world so far. It's been 5 years. Okay. Let's see if he says something in his... No. Oh, 3D. Hold on. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. Yep. Looks yummy. True. Can you teach us how to do texture painting correctly? Welcome, Corners Esports. The way that I actually, well, depends on what kind of texture painting you mean. The way that I texture paint right now is with the technique that I showed in last Friday's video. So if you want to check that out, you can do that. The way that I actually learned texture painting in Blender, or sort of face texture painting, how you texture paint a face to make it look realistic, is by, what is his name again? Oh, Flipped Normals Texture Painting. It's, I think, this one, where they go over the different layers and how they reach the end. And what they talk about here, you can combine with the technique that I show in the video from last Friday to make texture painting this a little easier. Yeah, so that's how I texture painted my characters before I had a face scan. And I think if you can do this, you can basically texture paint anything, because I think the principles stay the same. Okay. Breadman gives me Bulk Bogan vibes from Joel Vinesauce's Sims 4. How many polygons faces do you try to maintain on your sculpts? Welcome, Anna. I don't really... I have the privilege that I don't have to care about that anymore. Or my workflow kind of negates that. Because my PC doesn't really struggle when sculpting. I don't really go that deep into details with the base sculpt, like going from this sphere to like a body, for example. What I usually do is I sculpt it so that I have the main shapes, and then I retopologize it with soft wrap. So basically reusing a base mesh and then using that to retopologize my new sculpt. And then I already have like a sort of low poly, mid poly, I guess, body. And then I just use the multi-resolution to add more detail. I don't really check, like I usually only do like one image renders, so I don't really need to care about poly count that much. I probably I have a future project that's a little bigger that I would probably need to, but for the ones that I do right now, it doesn't really matter. Well, it does, you know, if you go to like multi-resolution stage 5 or whatever, then it's going to be very, like, it's going to take way longer to render. But yeah, right now I don't really care about it too much. We could look at like an old character, like the so of course this is only a bust, but still, when I turned my my character into a Disney character, you can see this one, for example, the oh, there you go. So that's the base resolution for the base mesh that I use, and this one for the bust has around, what is it, faces, vertices, 12,000. It's weird because I would have to think, wait, if you have a model, wouldn't you have 4 times? No, wait. Never mind. Oh yeah, I guess you roughly have the same vertice amount that you have face amount, I guess. It always kind of sounds weird because you create a face out of 4 vertices, but once you have 4 faces, you would still have more vertices. So you always have a little bit more vertices than faces, but it stays quite similar. Yeah. But yeah, it's around, I think, 12,000. Yeah, let's say 13,000. I have another retopo that I did myself. Let's see what it's there. This one, that one, I think is a little bit more. No, a little bit less. More, probably more. But I don't really try to optimize my polygons that much. Or is it? Nope. Nope. This one? Oh, wait. There it is. It must be this one. 1C. Here we have the contestant, and if we look at you can see it's a little denser. I think it's base. No, it's actually not. Oh, that's I guess it's even actually low polyer than the base mesh that I use. This one's my own retopology. You can see what it looks like. For this one, I actually tried to figure out how to retopologize the ear by keeping all the sort of faces by adding faces that surround the ear, so that it's very easy to UV unwrap, which I actually succeeded in. And it actually, looking at this face, oh, never mind. Okay, I thought I could make one more that goes all the way around. But these ones here, I think they all go around the ear. That's what I wanted to achieve here. And I did. There you go. Of course, there are always some that can't just stay in there. But at least these ones always stay in there, which is really nice. Look at this, perfect. I don't know if it's, topology can always vary in how you use it. And, maybe this isn't perfect for some use cases. But this looks pretty good to me. Not to brag, okay? But, yeah. So, looking at this, I actually haven't checked what the vert count is. 2000, there you go. So yeah, that's for another bust. So you know, one is 12,000, the one that I probably usually use. This one's 2,000, 2,000, 3,000, rounded up. So yeah, there you go. Okay. I'm trying to make guns, and that's pretty hard for the realistic textures. Yeah, well, realistic is always hard. I guess it comes with practice and, you know, seeing how other people do it. What are the black lines that go through your sphere? That's, here's the camera. One of those are two empties. One of them, called focus, controls where the camera looks at. So if I move this, the camera always looks at the lines. And if I can't move the camera still looks at the lines. This way I don't have to fiddle around with these settings here. And then I have another one, which is depth of field. This one, the diagonal one. So if I, for example, enable the face, face snapping, I can just place this somewhere, and that is exactly where the focus is going to be. So if I now go into material preview, we're just going to load for a while. There you go. And I look at the camera. There you go. We can enable depth of field. Just say focus object depth of field empty. And then if we, for example, tone down the f-stop, we can see it gets blurrier and blurrier and blurrier. But we can see the sharpest point. The focus point is exactly where this thing is. So this way I can very easily define the depth of field. So if I put this somewhere else, you can see the focus shifts to, for example, the eyebrow, or the what is it called, the eyelashes, or somewhere else. Of course, the way that I did it before is without this. You can then determine the distance. So you can say viewport display show limits, and then you have this little X right there, which is basically an empty, but you know, less dynamic. And then you can just change the distance, and that basically determines where the focus point is. But of course, it's way easier to do that with a free movable empty. So I just grab this. There you go. And then if I move this, you can see it follows the focus point, the limit follows the empty. And this, yeah, those are the two lines. Yeah. Camera to view. The problem with camera to view is that I still have the problem that when I animate the camera, I would still have to animate the rotation. So if I want to have a camera movement that goes from here to here, for example, I would also have to animate the rotation and always have to make sure that the focus point, that the focus always stays in the same place. This way I don't have to do that. I can just move the camera and, you know, the subject is always in place. And if I want to animate both, if I want to make the camera move and look somewhere else, I can still just move this around. Yep. I actually have a short about that as well on YouTube. I wonder if you can see that now with the new layout. It's probably pretty up there. I don't really have that many shorts on my main channel. Do you use any add-ons? I do, but just a few. Well, the easiest one is Node Wrangler. And then, let's see, how do I, there you go. Don't really use that one. The only ones that I really use, that I like added myself, is 3D print toolbox when I 3D print something. I think F2 I also added. I don't really use that one though. Loop tools sometimes. Quad remesher. Soft wrap, of course. best add-on that exists. Node Wrangler. Align tools as well, really useful. Bool tool, I think, as well. Self fracture can be pretty useful, and that's about it. And Rigify. Not that many though. Most of them I use sometimes, but not really that often. Okay, on to the next one. Getting into that salsa music. I think it's salsa, maybe not. The next one is by Pralisk. Pralisk has posted the creature once again. Let's read the comment. There it is. Got some more detail into the head of this thing today. Added some kind of xenomorph-esque ridges on his head. Felt like it breaks up the sides nicely, and as it transitions into the main lines of the side of the head, might continue those ridges down the sides of the back, honestly. I think somebody actually already said that this looks a little bit like Prometheus, or what is it called again? The artist that does these weird drawings or monster creatures like Alien. H.R. Geiger, right? H.R. Geiger. There you go. These, I don't know what you would call that. This style. Nope, hello. Please, oh, of course. There you go. These rib structures and then combined with these smooth surfaces. Something similar I think we can see here as well. Maybe not as, you know, a little different, but still looks a little inspired. And the, you know, especially these kind of ridges here also look like that. Hold on, let me see if I can find the old version. I would like to compare the two, just to see what the previous one looked like. There you go. So this one's, I think, the last version. There it is. So we have these little ridges right here, and then these gills on the side. Also some teeth and some more on the chest. Yeah, what I like is that you went into medium details and kind of refine the bigger shapes. One thing to keep in mind is not to add too much detail, because that can really, like, adding too much detail can muddy the appearance and make it look sort of too busy. And kind of, if you, for example, it's similar to adding noise to an image. It obstructs the main features or the main structure. It makes it harder to see what it actually is supposed to be, or what the shapes are. Yeah, so just make sure that you don't add these ridges everywhere. And leave some parts nice and flat, or, you know, big, and some areas can be very detailed. I think what I like, the simplest way that I have seen it being explained is we have like a box, for example, a machine box. 1/3, like, you have this big shape, which is the most simple thing. Then you would divide it into 3. This 1/3, you would add more detail. I don't know, like some lines right here. Okay, but then you would divide this box right here even into another 1/3, and in this one you would add even more detail. Like, I don't know, swips and bops and bips. Add more detail. So this way, if you would add all these swips and bobs and bobs everywhere, it would get very, very weird, and you wouldn't really see anything anymore because there's too much going on. But because you've split it, because you've only added it to, what would that be? Maybe like a 12th or 24th of the actual that was the 9th, right? Maybe. You know, just a small part of the big thing. The details actually are details, and not just like they don't, you know, muddy, I guess, the structure, and it still stays pretty clear even though you've added these small details. Yeah, so make sure that you don't add too much detail. Yeah, and then of course, probably haven't thought about or forgotten that, but, you know, you still need, well, I would think that it would need claws because of the sockets, I guess, or the you know, it looks like sockets for claws, but, you know, you probably of course you're not done yet, so yeah. But it looks, it has improved so far. It looks pretty nice, so I'm excited what it will look like in the end. Especially also adding like the textures and all that, if you want to do that. If Scorn had enemies, yeah, basically. Okay, yeah. So you're on a pretty good track. Let's get to the next one. There you go. Okay. This one is another example of post-production being useful. Once again, if you finish your render, always keep in mind 2 letters, PP, post-production. Okay. There's always more you can do with a little bit of a PP, okay? What you could do more with it is what you can see here. This is what the original looked. Nope, it's not what the original looked like. This is what the original looked like. Let's actually hide him real quick. There you go. So that's what the original looked like with nothing changed. And then I added a camera raw filter just to add a little bit more contrast into it. You can see it here. If you look at the graph here, if I hide this, you can see there's nothing, almost nothing in the highlights and nothing in the whites. Just bringing this up, you can see here, bringing up the highlight completely all the way to 100, and then the shadow, the whites up as well, can bring a little bit more color into the whites and highlights to add just a little bit more contrast and give it a little bit more depth. You can see the before and after. You can see how much of a difference only that can make. And you know, it can be hard to see that in just looking at the render. Okay. And then of course you can do even more than that, adding a few more highlights, for example here on the forehead and on the nose and on the cheeks where the light would kind of shine onto, also the chin a little bit. Then also adding small highlights in the eyes. Oh, I think I removed, did I? No. One thing that helps with glowing objects is to have a something you see when you look at a blender. Let's look at a sphere. You know what? There you go. So if you look at this friend here, okay, there you go, friend sphere, and we add a glow effect, emission. There you go. Something you'll see is that the color gets brighter the stronger it gets. Usually, so for example here, if you have a strength of 1, it's that. Let's actually give it a color, maybe even the red that you had. And then if we set it to, I don't know, 10, it gets slightly brighter because if you set it to times 10, it gets almost white because it's so strong in its light. So the stronger the color becomes, the stronger the brighter or lighter desaturated the color becomes, the original light color. And usually if you have like a glowing orb, for example, the brightest area is probably going to be in the core, and the way you can kind of show that and kind of add a little bit more, like just like this right now, it just looks like a circle, like a 2D circle. To make it look a little bit more interesting in 3D, you can add either textures to an emission object. So for example here you can say, hold on, you can say you can add what I sometimes like to do is just grab an image texture and then just grab some sort of image that you have in your for example here, some inspiration image, I don't know, even just some random one. I like this one because it has this cool texture here, or this one. Let's do this one. Adding it in there, you can see we don't have UVs right now. Okay, it looks kind of weird, but we can use this texture to our advantage. For example, by just scaling it up a little bit, getting this kind of weird texture, and then we can, for example, grab this and use a color ramp, and first of all grab the color that is in the original emission, for example, and put that into the emission, and this way we can add a more interesting glowing orb. A purely solid color always kind of looks weird because usually there's always variation in even things that glow, or there's a gradient radiating from the middle to the outer edges. You could either do this if you want to add some grunginess or some imperfections, or what you could also do is you could grab Fresnel or layer weight node and do the same. Basically, you know, convert a color ramp. I like to use facing. It doesn't really, like, Fresnel might be more accurate, but facing, I guess, makes it kind of feels a little bit more accurate or easier to manipulate. So then we get this nice gradient from the inside to the outside. We can also set this to B-spline. There you go, to make it smoother. And then we can, for example, grab this color again. And the brightest area would be in the middle. This one is right now the the whatever non-brightest area. And then we could, for example, turn down the saturation to make it kind of look like the glow in the middle is stronger than on the outside. It's kind of hard to... Why is it so hard to make the transition a little better? But this way you can kind of create a gradient that, or kind of add a little more structure to your glow, which can make it a little bit more interesting. Even though it might not be 100% more realistic, it looks more interesting. Yeah, so these are the two things that you can do to make your glow a little bit more interesting. That's what I've done, for example, for the eyes and also for the hair, because before it was just like a solid color here, like the ear, eyes, and hair. And then even just adding this can really help with the I guess contrast, you could also say, or you know, the structure, make it just a little bit more interesting. Yeah, post-processing in that. Let's read this one. Personal project tried to reproduce an original artwork, but I really struggled with the hair. Let's look at the hair. That's the original. And of course this one is also pretty dark. So maybe you kind of try to match the colors. This one might be a little too dark actually. Well, yeah, I think this is quite dark. I would probably make it a little brighter. Maybe add some sort of moonshine coming from the front, for example, just to add a little bit more contrast into it. But here, of course, we have quite a dark reference, I guess. I guess the main color is supposed to come from the glow. The hair. Hair is... Let me show... can I find it? Let's see if I can find the new favorite curve hair that I've seen. Let's see if I can find it. The way they make curved hair looks really, really cool, and probably something that I would want to emulate if I do curve hair. Let's see. I think it's partly sculpted, partly curves. It looks curved. Curved? It looks like curves. This one, I guess, and this one. So here we can see, you can see it's partly sculpted, but it looks like curves. The base looks like curves, and then, you know, sculpted to combine it, kind of, you know, adjust the shape a little bit. There you go. And then the other one is this one. Also, you know, looks a little bit more. Here you can see it. Very, very broad shapes, but it still looks like hair. And the way they do it here is... Oh, interesting. It doesn't zoom in. The way they do it is by analyzing the general flow of the hair, creating that general flow with these big, broad strokes, and then splitting up those big, broad strokes with some brush strokes. So here we have this big strand. But this big strand is being split up by this line here, for example. Maybe you could even say this line, just a little bit to add just a little bit more structure into it and change the, I guess, yeah, add more structure and more variation into it. And then what they do for this one here, for example, for this one, is they also add these small individual strands that also really help to make it look more natural, because oftentimes you have like individual hair strands or smaller strands that kind of fly away from the main body of hair, and that's what these kind of represent. And these can also help very like a lot in making hair look better, because they can kind of fill the gaps that are supposed to be there but maybe not as open as they are if you only have these bigger bodies of hair. Yeah, so you know, that's my new favorite way of creating hair. And that's how you could, for example, approach it as well. Creating big, you can see how big they are. Big bulks of hair. For this character, they can probably be a little flatter, but I think you can even do it here. The hair here is a little finer, as you can see. You know, usually wet hair is a little bit more. The strands, I think, usually tend to be a little thinner. So maybe you can be a little thinner with your strands here, but I think even here you can use that technique. And then adding just like another layer of fine hair to add more variation into it. Of course, it also comes with practice, but this doesn't look too bad. I think it comes pretty close to what you see here. Maybe the hair is a little curvier than here. You can see how straight the hair goes down from the face, but you know, it looks pretty similar. Yeah. Something. Okay. Yeah. But the essence of the character, or the essence of the image you have definitely captured. Yeah, here you get a kiwi from me as well. On to the next one. The next one is by, let's see, I guess Buckaroo. I doubt people use meta vaults anymore. I think for the creature they actually use meta vaults. I think, maybe. I don't really use them that much. I think they can be very useful for simpler bodies. But I think if you get to like a human, which has like these very narrow limbs, it gets kind of hard to really create a good base with it. Yeah. Dude, I don't need your talking. How do you usually make a base mesh before sculpting the skin modifier, Metabolts or Polymodel? I usually just, you know, start with a sphere. So, you know, that's what I start with every time. I sometimes, usually, dude, I don't want to hear your story, okay? I start with a sphere and either sculpt I usually now sculpt the head and reuse the retopo, like base mesh body, and change that a little bit. Sometimes I sculpt the whole body and then retopo, but yeah, right now I reuse an old body, or the base mesh body, I mean. Yeah, but I always start with a sphere. Well, not always. It's easier to start with a base mesh made out of multiple objects, but at least for the head, I start with a sphere. If you want to see how I make like a full body character from a sculpt, you can look at the how to create a character in 8 steps video. I think it's 8 steps. How to create a character in 8 steps video. There I show the workflow that I follow. Yeah. Define the strands, draw them on the mesh using a sharp brush, and then adding volume between these slices. Pinching the peaks gives it that stylized look. Yeah. That, yeah. Yeah. On to the next one. Dude, do we have non-vocals left? Where am I? Hold on. There it is. Oh, no vocals for the next 3 tracks. Okay. Buckaroo with the vampire. Comment. What is the comment? There it is. A vampire I made for my video submission in the V-Rising video contest. Ooh. Here we have the full body, we have a more detailed shot, and we have, I think it's the, the video. Or at least like a screenshot of it maybe, and another detailed shot. Something that you actually see in the detail shot here that you don't see in the other ones is that maybe you see it here. Actually, you see it there. Okay. Maybe I was just tripping. But here the character looks like porcelain or plastic. Not necessarily because it's stylized, but more because the skin looks very clean. Here are the things that I do to make a okay, let me show you. So basically to make a surface look realistic, the most important thing is variation. We actually have already seen it with the emission shader, but basically to make something look more realistic, you basically need to add variation to the base color, at least to the base color, to the roughness, and the normal. So basically you have a color, texture, a roughness texture, and an normal texture. This way you add surface imperfections with small bumps, you add surface imperfections with color changes, and you add surface imperfections with roughness changes. If you look at this one, we have variation for the roughness. The lips are glossier. You could maybe even add some variation into the face with like a texture. Then what I think would help the most here is color changes for the skin. Some areas could probably be a little wider, some maybe could have a little bit like I don't know if vampires have blue blood or they don't have any blood anymore, but just some small color variations I think can help here make maybe like black veins kind of showing. Just some variation in the color to really give the skin a little bit more variation can help a lot. So here, for example, what we could do, if you want to do everything procedural, you could grab, the easiest one would be a noise texture, put that into the base color, and then you could use we can even just use that. Then we could use the same one, use a color ramp, put that in there, put that into the roughness, make the whites, so white means rough and black means glossy. We can make this part here nice and glossy, the other one nice and rough. And then if we, for example, look at these different areas here, I probably want to make this darker as well, so I'm just going to use another color ramp, put that in there, and then turn this white, make this darker, so we can see the roughness a little bit better. And you can already see some nice surface imperfection, surface variation. Of course, you can also, for example, change the detail here. Detail doesn't change that much, but roughness does. You can see it looks pretty nice, looks like some puddles. And then we could also, play around with the roughness a little bit more, make it, wetter, or we can unwet it. Change these things here, and then to give it the final touch, we can grab the same texture and, for example, use it to add a bump map. Put that in there. Looks kind of horrible because I like to change the distance, but you can also change the strength. Maybe 0.1, maybe even less. Looks pretty good. Looks like a stone now, with like a mossy stone, for example. Then you could add some color variation here, like, hey, let's make it green. Well, let's, I don't know, put that there, and then we can change that to that. Push that up a little bit so that we have some nice white areas, we have some green areas, and then maybe one more there. Look at that, beautiful. Make this blue. Ooh, look at that. And then we could change this a little bit, add some more definition here by using color ramp, so that, for example, the puddles are fully smooth by just grabbing this, pulling it up. Look at that. And then we have some nice variation. Not only in the color, not only in the roughness, and not only, well, and also in the bump or normal input. If you want to do more, you can also do subsurface scattering, which could probably work for him, or you can do specularity as well. Specularity doesn't change that much. It basically just determines the amount of reflection, or it basically, well, it's basically the amount of light that the surface absorbs. So if it's at 1, it doesn't absorb, it absorbs the least, so it throws back the light that that hits the surface the most. So that, you know, this is, you basically see the light, you see the reflection of the light on the surface of this ball, and the more the ball absorbs the light, the less intense you can see the reflection. So if you set it all the way to 0, you can see there's no reflection anymore. You could maybe add some variation there as well if you want, but that's not going to make a huge difference. These 3 are going to make the biggest difference, and these are basically the ones that I always apply because they, you know, make the biggest difference. And that's what you could do for our friend here as well, your friend. There you go. You already have some bumps. You can maybe add some variation, like folds, for example, or maybe even just like some scratches or like a scar, maybe even. And then some roughness changes. Maybe the nose oftentimes is a little bit glossier, and then the color changes would probably make the biggest difference. You can really be creative here, like black, once again scars or black veins, stuff like that, you know. Or maybe even just making the lips maybe even brighter, like white or black, could both look cool. Yeah. Of course, the same applies basically to everything. So the code, everything that you see here, you can create. You can you know do the same. Apply these 3 things, and yeah, it would probably help everywhere. I think what people forget most of the time, or what people forget the most, is the color variation. I think it's easier because you have all these sockets. It's easier to just, you know, to plug something into the normal, plug something into the roughness, but actually to not only just define the color, but actually plug in a texture, a color texture, makes such a huge difference. But I think it's not necessarily that obvious, you know, from the get-go. Yeah, but here, you know, that's the first thing. The next thing that I would say is you have added some seam lines here, which is nice. I think you could maybe do the same here on this edge, for example, and maybe on this strap as well. You know, just these small details that can help. For this, it could probably actually be a little bit more like bigger. They could be bigger seams. This also looks a little bit like plastic. It could be. It looks like it's supposed to be leather. I think for leather, it's I'm trying to think. I think the edges are a little, like this edge is a little too sharp for leather. This looks a little bit like there's seam lines, but usually for seam lines you have like a crease that looks like this. This seam line right here looks a little bit more like this. So that's probably where the sort of confusion comes from. But I think those are supposed to be seam lines. I think what makes this look a little bit more like plastic is this very sharp edge. Usually leather doesn't just fold like that. Usually leather tries to stay as straight as possible. So this edge would be kind of hard to maintain. Yeah. But I like the outfit. Has a nice sort of focus with this nice bright red and then these dark colors. Adds a nice sort of focus around his head, of course, and then also this white head, all, you know, contrasting with the dark colors of the rest of the body. Looks pretty nice. Then we have the render. For the render, I think once again we can look at PP once again. I think we have, if we put this into Photoshop, we can probably see it. We have quite a lot of dark. I think night night scenes are kind of hard to create, because it is supposed to be dark, but to see something you need to add some sort of light source. I think oftentimes people tend to think like, oh well, it's a night scene, so let's make it as dark as possible, or let's make it very dark. But I think to make it more appealing, you would add brighter. You would still add bright sources of light into the environment, or something, you know, bright sources that light the character up, just so that you have a nice contrast and more depth in the image. If we would go in here now, we can see, oh hello, almost nothing in the middle area, almost nothing in the highlights, and almost nothing in the whites. So maybe even just bringing up the highlights a little bit. Look at that. Even just doing that can do so much. Just making the colors, I mean the moonlight brighter, maybe even like a torch here, this torch maybe even brighter, can really help with the depth. Now we have some dark areas here and we have some bright areas here. Maybe even bumping the shadows up a little bit can help. I don't want to make it too bright. But yeah. Of course, you don't have to reach like the whites area here for it to look good, but just a little bit more I think can help here. You can see how much it changes the face, for example. And moonlight can be pretty bright. Yeah. I don't know why it's flickering like that. Yep. Oh, then one more thing. You can see the I think maybe the depth of field can work here. You can see the depth of field is probably set so that the eye is in focus, because the texture here is nice and sharp, but everything else is very blurry. I think if you just draw out the depth of field just a little bit more, it makes it, right now it looks like there's no focus point, but then if you go to the top left, you can see there's like a little focus here. I think if you draw the depth of field just a little bit more, it's a little bit easier to kind of look at the image, because not everything is very blurry, basically. Yeah, it's easy to find the focus point, basically. Okay, on to the next one, anti-care. This one I think is, you know, very similar to the one that we had before. If you, for example, watch the stream, or you have, if you don't watch the stream and you watch the VOD, we have basically covered, you know, my suggestions basically for your piece in, I think it was Sammy. There you go. Basically what I said here applies to you as well. Starting with the basic head shapes. I don't know if I can, this one. Starting with this, trying to practice this one first, then going, and once you're comfortable with this, going to that. Once you're comfortable with that, going to that, and going step further into details until you reach the realistic finish, is my suggestion how you would, you know, improve. I don't really want to give specific feedback for this piece, just because, as I said before, like, if you do, you know, the next three, you know, looking at the third sculpt that you do after this is probably going to look way better, because they're going to, you know, you're going to improve so much that it's not really like, it's not really worth to point out the obvious that you will see if you do the next ones. So yeah. This is your starting point. Yeah. On to the next one. Or hold on, let's read the comments if there are any like special wishes. First sculpt ever, there you go. Working towards stylized style. Okay, I have a video for you tomorrow, okay? For everyone that wants to do stylized, you know, that wants to do stylized characters, or wants to create in stylization, like stylized things. I have a video for you tomorrow, okay? How I would approach it. Because stylization can be a trap, okay? And I don't want you to fall into the trap, okay? On to the next one. For this one I actually already gave feedback, but maybe we can do a little bit more. First of all, thoughts, question mark. The shortest amount of details you can give. Still need to add materials. And what I said is, looks nice. The chromatic aberration is pretty strong right now. You can see it here. This chromatic aberration is basically when the channels, red, green, and blue, kind of spread apart, so that you have this sort of separation where the edges. You can see like a color difference where you have like where you can see the different channels. For this one here, we can see the red channel right there on the shadows. Usually you see the red and blue channel, and here, you know, you see that, and it's quite strong. You can probably reduce that a little bit. It's very useful. This effect is very useful for if you want to make a scene very dynamic, or of course if you want to kind of emulate I think it's like an old camera effect when the lens is when you have a lot of lens distortion. You would also, I think, have more of this dispersion, I think it's called, or diffraction. What did I call it? Chromatic aberration. There you go. So if you want to kind of emulate that camera, sort of that camera that would do this effect, then it maybe would work like that. But it I think then you would also have to I think then the rest of the image wouldn't look like that. It would probably look a little bit less clean, more grungy, and less, I don't know, maybe would have less color. Yeah. Was there an update for this one? I don't remember. Nope. Okay. But I think I, gave most of the feedback, and somebody else said something about it as well. I think, yeah, I don't really have anything more to add to it. So let's go to the next one. Zooming through them right now. Do you have any experience making drivers in Blender? I do. For my first rig, I actually created drivers. I think the basics are fairly simple. It just kind of takes, a few tutorials to understand them. I learned them through, what is his name again? Royal Skies. There you go. Thanks for all the helpful tips. I did the glowing eyes girl. I definitely have little to no experience with post-production. Your edits definitely brought it much closer to my original vision. Yeah. You can do post-production in Blender as well. Maybe not this specific, like in these specific areas. But, you can do this, like the brightening of the eye, for example, in... Do I still have it open? I do not. Photo P, free version of Photoshop on the web with a few less features, but still, you can do some post-production there to see if it improves the image. And yeah, usually you don't see how good it can look, after post-production. You just have to you kind of fiddle around with it. Usually you can always improve a render. Yeah. Could you use Voronoi with the bump? I'm trying to make a dog nose texture, but I'm struggling. You can, I have a, what is it called? Fabric shader video. How to create a fabric shader in literally seconds. Or you can probably emulate that and use that for a dog's nose as well. Basically just grabbing a Voronoi, there you go. And if we just, grab the bump now, put that in there. Thank you. Okay. Sick. What is that? Why does it look so weird? Probably because it's so strong. Okay. Why does it look so weird? What? Something's weird. I'm doing something. Oh, there you go. invert, and there you go. You can then fiddle around with it a little bit more. For example, use a color ramp, probably to make it a little smoother. Maybe even use a B-spline here to round off the tips, and then maybe even use a B-spline here. Oh, hello, what is that? What are they? Is it like trypophobia when you are scared of these weird surfaces that are with these small holes? That's what this looks like. There you go. There you go. I think you can also switch this to F1, smooth F1. This might work better. Yeah, there you go. So this could work quite well for a dog's nose. And that's how you can do it. In seconds. Okay. I think I'm onto something. I'll be fine, probably. I just gotta keep plugging random things and see what happens. Yeah. I have something going, but it looks gross. Yeah, here's the final version of my post-production. You know, make the eyes a little brighter, the hair, forehead. You know, I mostly just made stuff a little brighter. Okay. Next one is by the Communist. Okay, nice name. And he made, what is his name again? I'm not good at anything, as you probably know by now. But we have another version, fresh off the press. Where is it? There it is. Look at him smiling at you, because my chat is on this side. Oh. Okay, there you go. So, first of all, make sure to stay hydrated. Okay. Let's look at the face first. This one is the previous version, and this one's the newer version, I would guess. Looks a little bit more detailed, this one. Could also just be the perspective, but yeah, let's look at it. So, I think we had a reference, did we? No, we don't. Well, I don't remember the name, but we can stay with this. Okay. Something that we see in this render, actually, I think we can see it here as well. Well, this one's hard to see, but something that I want to mention here is the flow of pores. I think you have added a flow to the pores. The flow of pores is basically just that if you look at the structure of the pores, because they stretch in a certain direction, they create a sort of small lines or like a structure or like a flow on the surface. And that usually follows these bigger folds. I feel like looking at the cheek here, or this fold, nasolabia fold I think it's called, and the nose, the structure, I think maybe it's a little bit too unified, a little bit too much the same. And this, I think the skin material can be improved. I think I would have to kind of play around with it a little bit to kind of see what I would change. I have a basic skin shader that I usually use. I can show what that would look like. I don't remember when I used the fully fleshed out one, but I can show the one that I use for... I'm not saying that mine's perfect, but you know, the one that I use right now. Okay, I need to actually open it. Nope. I don't want to keep the dog's nose. There it is, I think. Okay. So, there could be a few things that you could improve. So So what I do is, what you can see here, well, that's white, whatever that is, there you go. So I have a skin color for the basic, you know, so that's my face scan texture, to add some, you know, variation into the face color. And then I use multiple layers of textures to add more variation, add different things like the makeup and lipstick and stuff like that. So in the base looks like that. You can see some nice variation here, darker eyes a little bit, slight variation here on the nose, and of course the lips as well. And then we have the different, what are they called? Like areas of color for the face. I think at the top it's redder. No, the top is yellow, middle is red, and bottom is sort of greenish blue, like a tint for the skin that you add. And then I add some variation, like for example here the lipstick and the red, like eye, what is it called? Eye, not eyeshadow, but whatever. The eye, okay. some blush, as well as some more blush. I think, no, that's the eyeliner. And then a little bit like the cheek, cat, whatever, makeup. And then also for the roughness, I have a texture, which looks like, oh no, this one's for the subsurface scattering. Subsurface scattering, the basic value that I use here for my scale, like the value depends on the scale that you use for your model. The scale that I have here is this big, for like a half of a body. So it depends on that, but that's my value for that. And then I have of course, subsurface color red. These values, standard basic values. I actually have something for specularity as well, which is, specularity, because usually like eyeliner is very, very dark and doesn't reflect that much. So I needed to use the eyeliner texture to add specularity, change the specularity for the eyeliner. And then I have a basic roughness texture, which is just a vertex paint, or what is it called, color attribute. I basically just painted the lips a little like black or white, and then I inverted it so that everything is quite rough, but the lips are kind of more glossy, you know. If you wanted to make this super detailed, you would add a little bit more variation into the roughness. The site that I always follow is this one here, photorealistic head shading. There you go. It basically shows all the setup for all the maps and what they would look like in black and white. Is it this one? And also like what the differences are between them. So here, this is basically what I follow for subsurface scattering. Then for the same, and then we have I think that's roughness. I usually use that for roughness, even though that says specularity. And then of course the color as well. I can post that in chat, I guess, if somebody's interested. But yeah, that's what I follow for my maps. Applying those maps, if you if you don't have like a similar ones, can probably help. And sort of analyzing like different skin to see why it looks kind of off right now, you know, can help. I don't know. It's just like a hunch that I have. Maybe I don't have enough experience. And this actually looks super realistic, but there's something like about the glossiness. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the bumpiness. Maybe the bumps are a little too strong. That could be it. Bumps are quite subtle, like these pores, especially if you're further away, it's hard to actually see them. Here you can see my bumps have a distance of like 0.002. If I even just double that, you can see it's stronger, and it, you know, gets too strong. And if I double that, you can see it gets super strong. That could also be the problem, just that the bump map is a little bit too strong. looking at the hair, I don't really have too much to say about the hair. The hair looks pretty nice. This one looks pretty much like the original. I like the variation in the hair. I like the variation in the roughness. And the combing looks pretty nice. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about the hair. Even like the hair here for the sides looks pretty nice. Yeah. Of course, the head isn't fully fleshed out yet, but you know, so I don't want to give feedback on that because you probably already know that. And then the eyebrows look pretty nice as well. So yeah, I don't know, the skin, there's something about the skin. It looks a little too shiny for some reason, a little too glossy. I don't know. I think maybe even just turning down the specularity can help here. Yeah. Maybe roughness and specularity just a little lower. If I don't have textures for this, the values that I aim for specularity and roughness, I think it's both 0.4. Yeah, I think it's both 0.4. Maybe you can go a little higher for specularity, but I think I usually use 0.4, 0.4. Okay, yeah. But otherwise, it looks really nice. Trypophobia, yeah. On to number 10. We have reached number 10, which is Choi. Has been here from the beginning, or has said hello in the beginning. Maybe they have left already before they have gotten their feedback, but let's get to it now. There it is. This model is supposed to be amphibian humanoid. Sculpture is done in Blender. I have a few questions concerning anatomy and sculpting. Where do you search for good anatomy references? I tried to copy other people's work, but it looks like a lot of artists give up on realistic anatomy for a stylized look. I also tried to look for references on sites where you can spin realistic human models like this one, but this way also doesn't seem to help too. And for the last question, how do you make sculpture less bumpy? Take one of the images below. Any feedback in general is welcome. Okay, I actually agree. Something that I always check for when it comes to characters that are inhuman, I guess, is if the anatomy looks correct. So for example, if they have multiple arms. This one reminds me of the Mortal Kombat character. I'm curious how they did it there. Let's see if we can find it here. There's Goro. So the way that I would approach people with more than just normal amount of limbs is, this looks weird. I don't know how that would work, but okay. So first of all, I would look at what you want to add to the basic human form. Here they have added arms. The reason why I said this looks weird is because what I would do then is I would identify which muscles connect that limb to the core being the chest or the hips. And here for the arm, that would be the shoulder, which is added here. And there's like a small little muscle in the armpit, but this one isn't, like you can see it here. But the biggest one probably is the chest. And why this looks kind of weird to me is because there's no chest muscle that would go from here somewhere over here, which makes it look weird, or which it could work that way. But if it if there wouldn't be a chest muscle, the arms couldn't move forwards or backwards. They could, of course, curl like this, but they couldn't move. Let's see if we can draw this in this direction. Look at those 3D drawing skills. They couldn't move in this direction. Because the chest, the chest moves the arm forward, which this now couldn't do. So to make this anatomically correct, this would need, and functional, this would need a chest muscle right here. It doesn't have that, so it looks weird. I think the best reference that I would look for is, well, first of all, identifying which muscles you need. So you could say like arm muscles. Well, this one probably gives you the muscles that connect, like that are in the arm. You would probably kind of need to figure out which muscles connect to the arm. And then you could maybe say upper arm muscle attachments and find all of them. I would figure out which muscles you need, and then I would probably look at anatomy references. One of them I can give you right away is my own Pinterest board called Anatomy References. If you go in there, you can just look up, I guess, at Noggy_now, and you should find me and my boards. And here you can find a lot of references. And then you should also find this, for example. Here, and you can see sort of, you would basically have to copy everything that is here, connecting to the arm, also for the second arm, for it to be fully functional. Which means also a second latissimus as well. I forgot about that. So yeah, that's how I would do it. Yeah, to make it anatomically functional and correct. You can say, well, it's only supposed to move upwards and downwards, then you don't need all those muscles that the chest muscle, for example, but otherwise you would need it. Yeah. Something that actually helps a lot is looking at bodybuilding or sort of just workout tutorials, because they oftentimes explain exactly which muscle supports or which muscle does which movement. Like, what muscle do you need to move your arm not only upwards but also forwards? Kind of weird gesture. But it's the front head of the shoulder, for example, and also of course probably the chest a little bit as well, the upper chest. So you learn, for example, how the body moves by looking at workout videos, for example, and then you can kind of analyze, like, oh, my second pair of limbs is supposed to move up and down and forward and all that. So which muscles do I need for that? And then you know which ones you need. Yeah, knowing what muscles, which muscles do what basic movement, helps a lot. How do you make the sculpture less bumpy? Let's look at the references. I mean the images. It doesn't look bumpy. It looks pretty smooth. When it comes to bumpiness, I think what helps, I think you can see it here, right? Yeah. So I think you can smooth it out if you're patient enough. Something that helps is, of course, retopology. I think you can also bring, I think this muscle would be more over here. Like this line right there would be more over here. This muscle right here connects like that. So this line can move over there. The bumpiness you can fix by smoothing it. I think if you have, the problem is if you retopologize something, remesh something from very low res to very high res, the high res version adopts the low res bumpiness. The problem then is The high-res version is harder to smooth because you have way more vertices, so the smooth brush isn't as strong anymore, because it looks at the general surface and sees, well, looking at, I think it kind of looks at the, it kind of gauges whether it's bumpy or not, looking at a certain amount of vertices. And if the amount of vertices, like if the remeshing adds more resolution, of course, it looks at a smaller area and sees, hey, it doesn't look that bumpy, even though the big bumps are still there. So I would suggest remeshing in multiple steps. I usually like to go from my base resolution. If I use dynamic topology, I go from 20 resolution to 50 resolution and then to 75 or 100. If I do remeshing, I usually start with a dynamic topology of 20 to create the base mesh or to create the basic shapes, and then I remesh by picking with the by grabbing the, what is it called, remesh, and then the picker here, you grab the resolution of the surface, and then I usually divide it by 2 or 4, and then that's basically all that I do. Sometimes I go deeper than I divide it by 2 again, but usually I stick to divided by 4 once. Then once that is done, once I'm happy with that resolution, I usually retopologize my character. Yeah. And I don't really have these problems. Probably also because I remesh my body, which usually smooths everything out. Yep. There were some comments, hold on. And then of course this one is the final artwork, but looks pretty cool. Oh, there we can see the bumpiness. Okay, yeah, I think with what I said, you can kind of fix that. Working gradually more and more high resolution. Yeah. And I think, the anatomy looks pretty good. We actually have added some, what is it called? Like secondary chest muscles as well, so that's nice. Yeah. Looks pretty nice. Okay, let's go to the next one. Next one's by Zero. I think they had a pretty specific question. There you go. Here's the character. Question was, I need more feedback on the size of the eyes. So if you want to get some special insight into my thought process, I guess, you can join the Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter, I guess. So the thing that I did a while back is I did last week actually, I think. I wanted to finally figure out how big eyeballs are on average in a head. I heard five eyes wide is the width of the head. I have heard 7 eyeballs before. The problem is, if you look at an eyeball, the tear duct adds width to the eye, which means that the eyeball might look like this, but the tear duct is attached to the eyeball somewhere over here and adds more width. So the width of the eye, the visible eye, might look like this, but the actual width is more like that. So the head width equals to 5 eyes if you include the tear duct. But if you don't include it, it's more 6. That is my current conclusion after doing a few experiments. The way that I did it is basically by I grabbed the basic proportion of the eye. There you go. Which is basically, if you can divide the eyeball in 4, half of it, like 1/4 white, 2/4 iris, 1/4 white again is basically the proportions of the iris, because you can always see the iris and you can gauge the width of the iris. You could then add half of the iris's width to each side again to gauge the eyeball width, which is this. And then I have just, grabbed this and arrayed it, I guess. Kind of measured how wide the head is, and usually it is actually for all of them I think it was 6, or almost all of them. 6 eyeballs fits the best in my experience, and the distance between the two eyes, like the distance from corner of the eye or tear duct to the other tear duct, is I think 1.25 eyeballs, or a little bit more than that, depending on, that can vary a little bit, but that is my conclusion now, and that is what I follow now, which is also what I have applied to this character here, and I think this character as well. So something that still looks kind of weird with this measurement is that I found that the iris looks kind of big. Here, I think the iris looks kind of big. I think that could just be because the opening of the eye is kind of small right now. And it kind of always looks like, if you look at the references, or at like people, for some people it just kind of seems like they have smaller irises than others, but that usually isn't the case. Usually most people have the same eyeball size, and I think the iris doesn't vary that much either. But if, for example, if you compare him, looks very small, the iris, compare that to him, for example, you can see how different it looks. Look at his iris. Look at his, looks way bigger. It could just be an optical illusion because the eye is more closed for this one, so it looks bigger that way. Or it could just be it could be that the iris varies more. I need to look into that a little bit more. Maybe the iris varies in size a little bit, but I don't know, maybe. Like looking at these references, like she, for example, looks like she has quite small irises, but then if we look at let's see. If you look at her, for example, look at how much the iris takes up here and then here. Maybe it's just an optical illusion. Maybe. I don't know, these just look way bigger than these. But it like the eyeball isn't bigger from my measurements, okay? My limited experiment size, okay? But it looks like the iris looks smaller. I don't know why. Okay, but those are the sizes that I now follow, and hopefully they can help you as well. One tip that I want to give you with the eye hole is that I would make it deeper, because if you use a similar eyeball model that I do, where basically we have an opening which actually goes deeper into the eyeball to create like this hole, of course. If the eye hole in the sculpt is only that shallow, you will see the surface of the sculpt here. So I usually always dig a pretty deep hole so that doesn't happen. That could be the case for you as well. Maybe you have more shallow eyes. I have seen some that don't have this hole here. You don't need it, but this model has it this way. So I always dig deeper holes, I guess, for my eye holes. But just something to be aware of. Yeah. Looking at the size, it doesn't look too bad. I think it's pretty good in terms of size. It looks kind of weird because there's no eyeball now in it, so it's kind of hard to gauge whether it's maybe I think the eyeball could kind of change the appearance quite a lot. And something that you also oftentimes, or that you usually see, is that the sort of, you can see the lower eyelid, you know, this line right here, but usually this line kind of trails off as it goes to the, I guess, side of the face. Right now this actually looks like here it's less defined than here. I think what you could do is you can kind of smooth it out a little bit more so that it's smoother here, kind of define it a little bit more over here. Yeah. And then sort of the transition from the nose to the lips looks a little sharp right now. You could probably smooth that out a little bit as well. Maybe bring the nostrils either a little bit further back or the lip here in the side view a little further forward. That should, you know, help. Yeah. Okay. Very informative, thank you. Of course, always my pleasure. So he couldn't fold his lower arms. Could he? What do you mean with fold? He could. So this could be the latissimus. So he could lower his arms. He could raise his arms because he has shoulders, and he has, I guess, upper chest. Maybe this is also part of the chest. So you could kind of divide the chest, the pectoralis, okay? You can divide it into 3. There you go. This one is for upwards movement, upwards and inwards movement. The other one is for inwards movement. The other one is for downwards, inwards movement. You need all 3 to do all the movement, you know. Here it may seem like you only have the upper part, maybe the middle part, maybe the lower part, but yeah, it seems like he has all the muscles. There are also muscles for the shoulder blades, so he would need to have another pair of shoulder blades, and he probably also, I think that's what someone said as well, to be really exact, he probably also needs to have another pair of clavicle bones, although he could maybe attach, you could maybe attach the pectoralis muscles to the rib cage, maybe. That could be a solution for that. So you wouldn't necessarily need a clavicle bone. Okay, yeah. In the pose you were doing, you were showing of him doing that curling pose. You mean the character? I don't think I still have it, do I? Nope. Oh, there it is. This one. He couldn't do fold his lower arms. What does that mean? He couldn't move his arms forward. Maybe backwards. Yeah. Yeah, he could move it backwards because there's probably the back shoulder, but he doesn't have a chest. Okay, the second chest. On to the last one. Cross them in front of his chest. No, he definitely couldn't do that. There's nothing that can pull the arm forward. So he would be kind of, you know, he's kind of disadvantaged, at least this version of him. Okay. On to this one. Number 12. First of all, the question, if there is any. I've been working on a head sculpt, first time getting anywhere with a more realistic style. Any feedback would be much appreciated. Ignore the eyes. I need to give them specific attention. I just gave them some basic color so they don't look quite so nightmare inducing, okay? I think I need to pull the brows forward a bit more. And how to go during that, there you go. Yeah, Spirits already gave pretty good tips for the structure here and the jaw as well. I would agree with those. And then a few more things. I think you mentioned somewhere here now that you have worked with the numpad views, which is I think 1, 3, 9, 7. 9 I think is to do like to switch the side. 1 is for the y-axis, 3 is for the x-axis, and 7 is for the z-axis. Those are all orthographic views. You can switch to orthographic view also by pressing 5 on the numpad, which basically removes all perspective. Can be useful if you want to do, if you have like a character sheet that you're working off of. The problem is with orthographic view is that the face always looks flatter than it actually is, than you would ever see it normally. Orthographic view is, yeah, it doesn't have perspective. Real life always has perspective, so orthographic view is inherently unnatural. So I wouldn't recommend sculpting in orthographic view because it skews the proportions. I usually sculpt and have my viewport, at least this viewport is in 85 here. I usually have this one in 50. When I sculpt, I usually like to sculpt in focal length of 85. I think you said you switch now to 90, which I think is pretty good as well. Excuse me. One thing that you don't have with the front and side view is something very important, which is the 3/4 view. You can maybe see the front view of the face, you can see the side view, but you can't see the 3/4 view, which you have sent in here. For example, this view you can't really see. Something that you see here is this pretty big gap right there, and usually, or you would want to fill this kind of triangle here with a transition from the eyebrow to the side of the head. So basically this continues downwards like this. It looks kind of like that, which fills this side here. We can look at some references. Also, there's a little bit of fat above the eye, which adds this crease here. Yeah, so once again, the best thing I could say, I think, is looking at, analyzing and studying and learning how to create this, like first this, then that, and then that. It's probably the best thing I can tell you. Also, not to sculpt in orthographic view. And then yeah, so this first, something else that I would want to give you is to analyze the different layers of the face or the head. So we have so the 3 layers of the face generally are that we kind of need to care about are the bone layer, the muscle layer, and the fat layer. These 3 layers define the shape and shape of the body. Not the body, but the face. Well, the body as well. These 3 layers you basically have in the face, also in the body, and these define what the face and body looks like. So analyzing how each layer contributes to the face shape can help you understand why the face looks the way that it does. Also, looking at the simplified version, I would do this before I would analyze the face layers. And one of the things that people oftentimes forget when they sculpt is the fat layer, which fills a lot of holes in the face, which these holes you can oftentimes see in people's first sculpts, for example, because they don't necessarily consider the fat layer. Yeah. So to improve this, the most you could, analyzing this would probably be the best thing I can tell you. And everything that Spirit's already said, I would agree as well. Like the lips look kind of flat right now. You would you could probably just pull the corner of the mouth a little further forward, backwards into the face, and then maybe the middle a little further forward. That would help. Maybe pulling the nostrils a little further back, and then looking at some references for the eye as well, for the eye hole and the eye. And then also what helps a lot is actually adding an ear and the neck. You could probably also move the jaw a little further forward, or you would probably want to move the back of the head a little further forward. Hair oftentimes extends the head quite a lot, so you definitely can move the head a little further forward here. This is quite long. Yeah. Also, you could probably, hair adds quite a lot of volume to the head, maybe not as much at the top, but especially in the back. The further down you go for the hair, the more hairs lying on top of each other, which adds depth or volume, which means that especially in this area and especially down here, we have a lot of depth created by the hair. So you can definitely, yeah, shorten this head a little bit. Yeah. So first goal, this. Okay, yeah. Or first thing to look at. Okay, yeah. Hope this feedback was helpful. This time we had a little bit more time to talk about each one of them. And we covered quite a variety of topics. Hope it was helpful. And if you're sculpting currently and just listening, hope your sculpt is going well. Yeah, so yeah, doing the 4th heads thing should help a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And this will end the feedback session today, the stream as well. There's going to be a new video tomorrow that will cover how to cover your art style and you're working with a stylized style. Kind of my, I guess tips that I want to give you on that, I guess. And yeah, hope you have a great weekend. Of course, if there are any questions, then you can always post them in the questions channel. Make sure to join the Discord for any updates or whatever, or to join, to post your pieces, ask for feedback, or I don't know, find people to sculpt with. Yeah. Thank you for watching. Thank you for chatting. Thank you for listening, or just being here. Hope you have a great day. Hope you have a great weekend. Maybe I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. See ya.